Hi guys, and welcome to the Ace Tanker for the 59 Pattern, the Tier 8 Chinese Medium Premium tank. This tank was made available for a limited period here on the EU server way back in September. I picked it up then and didn't get around to playing it till now. But yeah, this is another Tier 8 Chinese Premium tank to go along with the Type 59 and the T-34-3. And when this tank was first released, it didn't get a lot of love. A lot of people felt that it was terrible, gave it terrible reviews, and I don't think it sold very well. I could be wrong on that, but I don't think very many people were tempted to pick it up. But as I'm a tank collector, I had to plunge my hand into my wallet and pick it up regardless, but I wasn't in a hurry to play it because I'd heard so many bad things about it. Yeah, the 59 Pattern. Historically, there is absolutely no information regarding this tank because it is a Chinese tank. Now, a lot of the Chinese tanks in-game are based on, let's just say, rumor or very little information, because while Wargaming do have a Chinese server and they do have World of Tanks in China, unfortunately Wargaming themselves don't control what happens in China. The game is actually licensed to a Chinese company. That company is then responsible for giving information about Chinese tanks to Wargaming, but because they're behind the, let's just say, Chinese Iron Curtain, unfortunately a lot of that information, even though it's provided, can't be verified. There is very little known about Chinese tanks outside of China. This is another concept. Some sources say it is a concept. It never existed. It was a proposal. Other sources, although there aren't very many, say it actually made it to prototype stage, but it doesn't really make sense, because what you've got here is you've got a Patton, I believe it's an M48 Patton turret, sitting on a Type 59 chassis. Now, in real life, the chassis ring, or the turret ring on the chassis, is too small to fit the Patton turret, so it would have required extensive remodification of the chassis in order to allow the chassis to fit this turret, which really doesn't make that much sense. If you're considering that maybe it was China's attempt to get rid of maybe some surplus Type 59 hulls because the Chinese had moved on to the WZ series of tanks. It just doesn't make any sense for this turret to be on this chassis. However, again, the Chinese company that have licensed Wargaming's products in China say that it was a concept, so Wargaming went for it and they stuck a Patton turret on a Type 59 chassis, and only one was ever built, if you believe one source, or it was a concept tank. It never made it off blueprints, if you believe the only other source. But other than that, nothing, absolutely nothing is known about this tank. The tank itself, as I say, got a lot of bad feedback when it first came out, and it's very easy to see why, but we'll get into that in a moment because it's the first time the tank is featuring on the channel. Taking a look at the gun, the gun actually does about 2000 DPM, so the gun performance is actually quite good. Pretty average for a Tier 8 medium tank. The penetration got a recent buff, so it's up to 190 millimeters of penetration, bringing it in line with a lot of the other Tier 8 mediums. It's got the standard 240 damage with the AP. It's a premium tank, but of course it doesn't see premium matchmaking anymore. None of the premium tanks do, or the newer ones that are being released. So yeah, this gun, it's going to do fine in Tier 8 games when you're top tier. It's probably going to struggle a little bit sometimes in Tier 9 games against some Tier 9 tanks, and it's really going to struggle in Tier 10 games, and this tank does see Tier 10s, unfortunately. The premium ammo is heat, 250 penetration, 240 damage again. Again, that's okay. If you're willing to fire heat, you might make more of an impact in Tier 10 games. And then the HE. Know nothing about it. Only got the HE on the tank in case I need to reset cap or anything like that. But yeah, the DPM seems quite good. The aim time is about 2.4 seconds. You can get that down with cruise skills and equipment. The rate of fire is about 8 rounds a minute. Reload time is just over 7 seconds, so very similar to maybe the Mutz or the Pershing. So yeah, I mean, the gun is a standard gun. It's a premium tank that gets a gun that is competitive with any of the tier 8 mediums in the game, regardless of whether or not they're premium. So the gun itself is actually quite good. A lot of sources also say that one of the big positives of this tank is it gets 9 degrees of gun depression, but that is rubbish. Yes, it does get 9 degrees of gun depression, but not over the front of the tank. Over the front of the tank, the gun depression is actually only 7 degrees, so that's better than maybe the Type 59 or the T-34-3, but yeah, 7 degrees over the front. It's good, but it's not great. Over the back of the tank, it gets 5 degrees of gun depression, so that's okay, I suppose, but it does get 9 degrees over the side of the tank, so if you're willing to go side on or shoot over the side of your tank, you are going to get your 9 degrees of gun depression, but usually you're only going to have 7 if you're shooting over the front of the tank or you're trying to angle and staying slightly angled. But yeah, on paper, the gun seems to be quite good. The mobility, 50 kilometers an hour, seems to be okay. It's pretty average for a tier 8 medium. The power to weight ratio seems to be okay. It's very similar to the Type 59, obviously, because it's a Type 59 chassis. So yeah, I mean, the tank on paper, mobility-wise, gun-wise, seems pretty competitive compared to a lot of the premium medium tanks at tier 8 or the regular medium tanks at tier 8. But as I say, the tank does have problems, so we're going to pop into tanks GG. So as I mentioned, the first problem is the gun depression. As I say, while on paper it has 9 degrees of gun depression, it actually only has, it only has 8 degrees or 7 degrees over the front. If you get to the side, you've actually got 9 degrees of gun depression over the side of the tank, and then the rear of the tank is only 5. So gun depression is not quite as good as advertised, but it's okay. The armor is surprisingly good, or it's surprisingly bad, depending on the matchmaker. This is a tank that's very reliant on the matchmaker. If you've got lower tier tanks, if you're top tier in a tier 8 game, you've got lower tier tanks shooting you, the armor can be very good. It's a Type 59 hull, so you can angle, you can side scrape. You can see that the effective armor, if you're slightly angled, is about 170 millimeters. You've got the lower glacis, which is very good, angled at almost 200 millimeters of penetration required. And the frontal turret armor can be very good. Again, this tank gets criticized for its armor, but as you can see here, the frontal turret armor extremely well rounded. You can get a lot of bounces from the front of the turret, especially against lower tier tanks. Even higher tier tanks are going to have some problems sometimes. The gun mantlet, in places, the gun mantlet is huge on this tank, but you can also see it is very good. So even higher tier tanks are going to have problems going through the gun mantlet on this tank occasionally, but just be aware there is a very weak strip around the gun, and if you know what you're doing, this is where you're going to be shooting this tank from the front, because even lower tier tanks, you can see here, you only need 119 millimeters of penetration, 150 on the gun itself, 150 to 180 to the side. So shoot the center of the gun mantlet, it is very weak. Shoot the outside of the gun mantlet, is very strong. But shooting the center of the gun mantlet is not only going to get you a penetration, it's also going to knock out the gun and the gunner. So you're going to knock out a gun and a gunner by shooting the center of the gun mantlet on this tank. But other than that, the rest of the turret is very effective. The hull, again, very effective against lower tier tanks. Higher tier tanks going to have absolutely no problems going through your hull. Other problems for this tank is, again, because it's a Type 59 chassis and it's Chinese, the fuel tanks are stored behind the lower glacis, so if you're not angled, the lower glacis can be effective angled, but if you're not angled and tanks are shooting you in the lower glacis can pen, they are going to potentially knock out your fuel tanks and set you on fire with shots from the front. The ammo rack also happens to be on the front of the tank, so if you're shooting this thing and you can pen the upper hull, then yeah, the whole right hand side of the upper hull underneath this huge cupola, all this area here is the ammo rack, and shots in here are going to take out not only the ammo rack, it's also going to take out the gunner. Again, shots through the gun, take out the gunner, shots through the right hand side, take out the ammo rack and the gunner, shots through the left hand side of the frontal hull, take out the driver. Yeah, so this tank, it's just a lot of weak spots, but it can be, as I say, effective. It's got very, very good side armor, so you can side scrape incredibly well in this tank. If you change an angle and you're working corners, you can see that the side armor can be very, very good, again, even against higher tier tanks. So, yeah, the armor can be good or it can be bad. It depends on the skill level of the players who are playing against this tank, because if they know where to shoot, they can set you on fire, they can take out your ammo rack, kill crew members, take out your gun, kill crew members. Lots and lots of ways of damaging and this tank being very, very annoying. The front of this tank is incredibly well armored, but there are lots of weak points if you know what you're doing. Just on a side note, it's got two viewports to the left and right. These are not hitboxes, so again, if you've only got these to shoot at, don't shoot at them. A little bit like the T-29 at Tier 7 for the American Heavies. These are viewports and they aren't hitboxes, so you're not going to get a penetrating hit if you shoot them. And then let's come down, let's get to the elephant in the room, which is this absolutely humongous cupola. Now, we've said that the turret armor is incredibly good if people aren't shooting at your gun. Yeah, you've got this cupola here, and you can see that the effective armor goes anywhere from 200 to 70 to 200 to 93 to 79, 81. You've got this absolutely huge cupola. Well known, the pattern's well known for it. Yeah, this is just lower tier tanks might bounce if they hit it on a bad angle. Higher tier tanks are going to have no problems going through this at all. Lower tier tanks, if they get it at a good angle, have no problems going through it. As I say, it can be a little bit troll sometimes. Sometimes they hit it at a bad angle. They have problems penning it, but most of the time they're not. So this is a huge, huge weak spot you've got to constantly keep hidden, and that means you need to play the tank very, very carefully. That means you need to focus on working your way around right-hand corners to try and keep this hidden. So right-hand corners, if you can keep the tank side scraping around right-hand corners, keep this cupola hidden, it means you're only exposing your side armor, which is incredibly good, your turret, which is incredibly good, and it's really only leaving enemy tanks this weaker area in around the gun to shoot at if you're working around right-hand corners. Of course, if you're working around left-hand corners, while your turret armor is good, your hull armor is good, people are just going to be shooting you here. The gun depression, again, while the tank has good gun depression, as I say, it's only got 7 degrees over the front, but it also means if you're using this tank on hills, yeah, you're going to be exposing this part of your tank long before you can get your gun on target. So even though the gun depression is very, very good, if you're trying to use that gun depression and you aren't or don't have a way of hiding this cupola, yeah, you're just going to get shot here if you're trying to work on hills or trying to use this tank as a hill warrior. So, lots of weak spots, lots of crew damage, lots of module damage, but, you know, it depends on the players you're playing and the matchmaking you get it into, because the armor on paper is actually very, very good and can be very, very troll. As long as I say, the enemy don't know what you're doing, or as long as you are top tier. When this tank gets into tier 10 games, it is just, you know, it's free XP and free experience for the enemy team, because the only way they're going to bounce against this tank is if they hit the gun mantlet at a bad angle. But the hull is going to be ineffective against higher tier tanks. The cupola is going to get killed by tanks firing HE or derp guns. Yeah, it's a very, very tricky tank to play. You really, really need to know the weak spots and how to play it to its strengths, which I don't, because I've only played 2 games in this tank. Or possibly 3. I think this is my second or my third game in the 59 pattern, but enough talking, let's go. So, yeah, we're here on Himmelsdorf. I am top tier, and that means that my armor is effective and my gun is effective, and I'm not going to have to fire any premium. Quite a few tier 8s on either side, 7 tier 8s, a bunch of tier 7s, and a couple of tier 6s, but yeah, very nice matchmaking. As I say, this tank, not quite so nice when it gets into a tier 9 game, and definitely not nice in a tier 10 game. That just that cupola, that cupola makes this tank. It negates so many of the strengths, but what I'm going to be doing here is, it's good I've spawned on this side of the map, because it means I can use this mound of rubble, I can hide my cupola. I'm not exposing my cupola, I'm exposing my strongest armor because I'm working my way around a right-hand corner. And we've moved up. Now, during the countdown, I did ask for help on the hill, and thankfully our team are coming up to the hill. So what I'm just doing here is I've got a little bit of early damage on the T-44, waiting for the T-44 to fire. I'm going to ignore the Carnarvon, pop out, shot into the lower glacis. Was trying to track him, but just couldn't get in. This is one thing the tank is actually very, very good at. It's very, very good at popping out, taking snapshots. The accuracy on the move is extremely good. Didn't want to hang around and shoot the track wheel on the IS because I saw the Carnarvon poking up on the minimap. Carnarvon's back, reversing back into cover, miss a shot in the move, but this tank is actually very good at shooting on the move. It's got some of the best on the move stats. Unfortunately, the Carnarvon decides to go for me. T-29 goes for the Chiri. But, yeah, we've got a huge wolf pack going on here. We've got Super Pershings, Chiri, myself. And you can see that 190mm of penetration, more than enough to go through a KV-3 even at an angle. Looking for a shot in the T-29. And this tank, best played with support. It's a support tank, guys. It really is a support tank. You've got to play it with other tanks around you so that they can tank the damage, take the hits. And you can just focus on tracking enemy tanks or shooting enemy tanks while they are not focused on you. So, kill on the Tiger P, Carnarvon here. I'm gonna go for the such a wolf pack here. Can't get any shots. Going for the ammo rack on the Carnarvon. Gonna try and track. Nah, he's dead. I'm not gonna reload in time. So I've gotten away with very little damage. Oh, it's just so many tanks here. Too many tanks. If you look at the mini map, we've been flanked, but there are targets down to the right. So I'm going to hang around here, and as you can see, again, I'm hiding my weak spot. I'm hiding my cupola and using the right-hand corner here. I'm angled. I'm hiding my weak spot, going for blind shots on the Tiger. Now, the Tiger must have used a repair kit, so I didn't actually... that was a mistake by me. I didn't look at where I got shot from, so the Tiger actually shot me from further to the left. So I hang around taking a couple of blind shots at where I thought the Tiger was, but... Again, if I'd been a little bit more aware at this moment in time, I would have realized that the Tiger had moved. But in the meantime, now that I don't have any targets down to my left, I decide I'm going to come back and we're going to deal with the tanks that have come around towards spawn. Now, this is where the tank is a little bit more tricky to play because now I'm going to be working my way around left-hand corners. And that means I'm going to be exposing my cupola. So up till now, I've been able to keep my cupola hidden. But I'm going to be using, you can see the speed mobility here, 50 kilometers an hour top speed. So the tank is not slow. It doesn't accelerate amazingly well, but it's not bad. Our Yag Panther went down, but I decided just to go for it. And while this tank is extremely good at shooting on the move, somehow I missed that easy kill on the Yag Tiger. Cromwell B, oh, he gets taken out. So just a Cromwell B and a Leva down in our spawn, and I have absolutely no fear. Unless the Cromwell B is firing premium ammo, he's going to have major problems penning me, but yep, he is firing premium ammo. He could have gone for my cupola, but yeah, we ram him for 200 damage, shoot him for 250 damage. He is shooting me now, but as I say, he needed premium ammo to do that. So we're up to 3.4k damage already. You can see that the DPM on this tank really isn't bad. It's got a competitive gun. It does have a lot of problems, but I would not say it's a terrible tank. It's only terrible when it is at the mercy of the matchmaker. So shooting on the move, extremely good. So Leva goes down, just one tank left on the enemy team. Very quick game, KV4 left. There's no way I'm going to get down there in time to deal with the KV4 before he dies. So that's pretty much it. This is my second, possibly my third game in the tank. And as I say, all the problems I've mentioned are reports from other people. I haven't experienced these problems because I just haven't been in the tank long enough to actually experience the crew being damaged, the modules being damaged, but as I say, a lot of people have reported these issues, so if I spend more time in the tank, I'll probably expect to see them myself. Almost get down here in time for doing a little bit more damage, but come on. Nah, he goes down, unfortunately. I think that was an ammo rack, but anyway. Yeah, first ace in the 59 pattern in my second or possibly my third game. So yeah, the 59 pattern. I don't think the tank is terrible, but then again, I've only played 3 games in it. So yeah, I think this tank is extremely dependent on the matchmaker. I think the tank is very, very good if it gets top tier. I think it's got very, very good armor. If you can keep that cupola hidden, if it's top tier. I think the gun is very, very competitive if it's top tier. In tier 9 games, I think the tank can do a job. In tier 10 games, I think the tank is absolutely terrible, because most tier 10s are going to tear you apart, and your gun is going to struggle against tier 10s. So it's a tank that's very, very dependent on the matchmaker and what sort of matchmaking you're getting. But it's definitely not as bad as I was expecting. Now, again, I feel that I can't really talk too much about the tank because I haven't experienced enough games in it, and I haven't experienced the problems other people have been reporting. I haven't experienced multiple crew members being killed from a single shot, or multiple modules being damaged by a single shot. I haven't experienced that much ammo rack. I haven't experienced any ammo rack problems or any set on fire from the front problems, because I just haven't spent enough time in the tank. So after I played my first couple of games in the tank, I went into Tanks GG and suddenly realized, because I'd been bouncing shots and I expected this tank to be absolutely terrible, and I went into Tanks GG and suddenly discovered, you know what, the armor on this tank is extremely good if you're top tier. As long as you can keep that cupola hidden and are top tier, I think the armor is very, very good. If you yeah, unfortunately get into higher tier games, then the armor is dreadful. But yeah, it's all down to knowing the strengths and weaknesses of the tank. And as I say, this is my second, possibly my third game in the tank. We picked up the Ace, picked up Confederate, picked up High Caliber, finished top on XP with 1332, did almost 4k damage and just the 1 kill. Yeah, it was an easy game. I was top tier, got into the action very, very quickly, got to use my gun depression, and thankfully spawned on the right side of Himmelsdorf, which meant I was able to use terrain features to hide my cupola. It would have been a different story if I'd spawned on the other side, because I wouldn't have been able to hide my cupola. Yeah, it's just the tank. It's just the tank. Maybe it adds character. Maybe it's not a problem. Maybe it's just character building. But we fired 21 and we only hit 17, so the shots I missed were blind shots on a Tiger that had repaired and moved, and I didn't realize that. But of the 17 shots we did hit, we penned 16. So top tier, the gun, very, very competitive. Decent DPM, around 2000 DPM, can be boosted with equipment and crew skills as per usual. Penetration and alpha damage seem to be pretty standard across the board, so it's got a gun that's competitive with other tier 8 medium tanks, let alone premium tanks. So happy with the damage, doing almost 4k. Spotted 2, damage 9, destroyed 1, 740 assistance damage. And look at this, guys. Ammo costs, 21 shots fired. Ammo costs only came to 6,000 credits. So the ammo seems to be quite cheap on the tank. The repair costs seem to be quite cheap, and it's a money maker as long as you can do damage. 104,000 credits made with a premium account. Now, assuming you get it into a tier 10 game, you're not going to be getting this much damage done with this gun, and you're going to be firing a lot more premium, so it's going to cut into your profit margins, again, depending on the matchmaker. So overall, we finished with 2,000 XP. Wasn't my first game in the tank. It wasn't my first game of the day. As I say, I sat down, decided to play it in a brand new tank that I hadn't gotten around to playing. It was my, I don't know, second, possibly third game in the tank. But yeah, it surprised me. It surprised me. So I knew nothing about this tank when I first started playing it, and it actually forced me, after playing a few games, to go out and look at it in Tanks GG, because the tank was just performing much, much better than I was expecting it to. And a lot of people were saying really, really bad things about the 59 pattern, which meant that I just didn't feel inclined to play it. It was sitting in my garage for 4 months before I actually played it, because I was expecting it to be terrible. And it surprised me. It did surprise me. But yeah, it's not a review, guys. I'm really not going to be able to bring you a proper review on the 59 pattern until I sit down and spend a day in the tank and maybe play 20, 30 games in a row in the tank and see if I can experience some of that multiple crew damage or multiple module damage, or getting shot fire, setting fire from shots to the front, or ammo racked from shots to the front, because all that information is just going on information based on what other players have said about the tank. But my own personal opinion after 3 games is it's not bad. It's a competitive premium tank as long as it's top tier, but it absolutely sucks if it's not. So that's it, guys. It is the 4K. I know it's been a while. I've been having health issues. I actually today went to see an eye specialist, so hopefully they're going to be getting back to me soon and let me know whether or not there's anything serious going on. But my eyesight's getting there. It's almost 100% again, so making videos again. But yeah, anyway, I'm going to be doing a lot of videos coming up over the next couple of weeks, not just World of Tanks, other games as well, and I'm going to be giving out stuff because it's about time to celebrate 4K subscribers. I'm going to be giving out a couple of Steam games on this particular video, so if you're still watching and you're interested in getting your hands on some Steam games, I'm going to give out two. I'm going to give out two Steam games per video this week, or per World of Tanks video this week. Just let me know in the comments. You can comment about anything. If you're not interested in winning a Steam key for a game, and you still want to comment, just say no game or no Steam games. But if you are interested in picking up or winning a free Steam game, let me know in the comments, and I'll be having a draw later on this week. Anyhow, first ace in the 59 pattern. It's done, it's dusted, and I won't be playing it again until it's time for the review. There are other tanks I need to play first. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.